man.
And now, it's time for the Stain Game with your host, the one and only Justin Menezes.
I love it.
All right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching, tuning in, listening, whatever it might be. Thank you for joining us. This is the Stain Game podcast with Justin, yours truly. And today we have a very special guest, Caleb Roth, the man, the legend, the myth himself is on. Caleb, how are you doing today?
And I'm better than I deserve. Thank you so much for having me here today. I love the intro. I love all of it. The music's good.
Yeah, well, like you and I talked about earlier, it's not me, it's Roth. That's your last name. Rob, the producer himself, he came up with something that was copyright specific that wouldn't get us kicked off some of the different podcast streaming places, as well as YouTube. And then he came up with the countdown with the bell ringing, kind of like let's get in the match, get in the ring. And
I like
do some beating up of things. And like you and I talked about, I like to smash things when things don't work out. And so he thought that went well with the countdown.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you having me on either way it goes. So
yeah. So how's the weather in Nashville or in your area in Alexandria?
Season has begun. The staining season is on. We're staining. It's I don't know, it's like 75 degrees probably right now. It's sunny.
Awesome.
We've had a few weeks of that. We've had some rain off and on, but we're in the game, and I think a lot of guys are staining right now, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, we started our official season started last week. We did a nice wedding venue, fence, entryway, a big tongue and groove ceiling, and then we started washing a couple of decks this week. Had nice weather, 80 degrees on Monday, 75 yesterday, and today we are in a blizzard right now with wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour. So we'll see.
Is it
We'll see
snow?
what happens.
You got snow on the ground?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's I don't know if you can see it out the window. Yeah, I guess you can't see it with the glare.
Yeah, it is snowing. Look at that. Wow.
Yep.
Well, it's sunny out my window, baby. It's a gravel parking lot, but yeah. It's we got good weather.
If you think your weather is bad, come to Nebraska, where you'll be out in shorts one day, and then the next day you're in snow pants and boots shoveling and with the snowblower out.
Yeah,
clearing out the driveway and
dust storms and everything else. So it's a crazy place.
Yeah. We love it. I love it. Even with this crazy weather, a crappy football team for our collegiate football, we still love it here. It's a good place.
I like it.
So let's jump into staining. Obviously, you own Expert Stain and Seal. You have Stain and Seal Experts, the actual service side of things. Gopher Wood. What else is Caleb doing these days?
Well, I just think it's a good idea to for me to express my creative entrepreneurship, right, and do businesses. That's just my personality, and I thought it was a good idea to do things that I needed a need for. I guess Amazon come about as a need. They started making deliveries because they needed somebody that didn't suck to deliver their packages, right? And so I think that's the same for us. We started staining because we were in the fence industry. We had a need. We needed the fences stained. We started making our own stain because we had a need. And then same thing with pre-stained lumber. We had a need for that. And so everything we do is just kind of this circle of life. We want to make sure one business feeds the next business. It's not at all uncommon, I think, in different businesses. So we're just all in the wood care thing. And so that's what we do.
Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing with those who don't know, most people who follow you know your story. What got you into the deck and fence staining business itself?
Well, it wasn't me. I give that glory to God because he said I was looking for any way to get out of the fencing business because I was fed up. I was burnt out. I wasn't making any money. Was raised in a family fence business, and I took that business over. Ran most all the operations, all the sales, all of the things. From I guess about 18 to, I don't know, 25, 26, 27, 28, I guess, something like that. And I was burnt out and fed up. We didn't know how to run a business. We knew how to run a business like a lot of you guys know how to run a business, but we didn't know why the guys across town in the fence business had brand new trucks and had ski boats and skid steers. We didn't understand that. Why are we working so hard and we're not getting anywhere? And so that was a big struggle, and we just didn't know how to scale the business. And so I was looking for something else. And like I said, God said, "You're going to stain fences." And I said, but he was right. And so I went and learned how to stain fences and figured out that I had no idea what I was doing, and just spent the next up until now. That was 2012, and spent from 2012 to today just trying to learn everything I could about wood care, which I learned most of that stuff early on. And then I spent the next half trying to figure out business and learn how to scale a business, how to grow a business, how to hire people, how to manage people, how to run inventory, how to plan for the future, how to grow, how to invest back in the company, all of these things. And so, yeah, I've just spent, I guess I have an affinity for learning, and I want to always learn. And really for me in my life and what I do is the staining business took me from making literally 28 grand a year, was the most I ever made in the fence business. I was a commissioned salesperson. I sold over $1 million worth of fence a year, or right at it. We always bumped the $1 million mark, and 28 grand was all I could ever pull off of it for myself. And that wasn't enough just to bring my wife home from work. It wasn't enough to, buy upgrade our vehicle if we needed it. And so wanted something different. And the stain business allowed me to do that. And so my passion now is to be the guy that I wish I had when I was 25 years old. and just show them that way, basically lay out that yellow brick road for them and say, follow this path because I know it works. And if it'll work for me, it'll work for anybody. So that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to hear, when you think of a lot, I think there's a misconception in small business when someone says or hears you talk about, oh, you sold $1 million worth of fence, but you took home $28,000. That people just look at the bottom line of the $1 million and they forget that in that $1 million of fence sale, there's a large chunk of that is just materials. And then from there, you've got your operating costs that you see on the ground.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that the fence business, I was one of a team, right? My family, my mother was in the business. She ran the books and answered the phones. I ran all the operations and all the sales. And my father was sort of an absentee owner, so they made their income from that. We made our income. So there was, it's not like the business only had 28,000. It had profit for the business and things, but I wasn't the owner, right? So I wasn't the beneficiary of that. I was just an employee. So, but if we would have been charging a 50% gross margin instead of a 30% gross margin, it would have changed everything, because it would have probably literally 5 or 6x our net profitability in the business, and it would have changed everything, and I wouldn't be here today. So glad that we were so broke when we were, and that we figured out, I think I'm a stubborn individual, so it's probably good that I've gone through all these things the hard way so that I can hopefully save you from having to do it.
Yeah. And you've become who you've become through going down the roads that you've gone through in the past that have led you to where you are today. Right. A lot of times I think of Sean King, and I bring him up pretty often because a lot of folks will look at Sean today and they'll see the social media aspect of Sean, where he's traveling all over the country. He's building amazing fences. He's got a great company that he's built from the ground up. And it's very easy to see him today and envy Sean today of like, wow, that guy's got nice trucks. He's got a great company. He's traveling around the world. He's doing these fence academies. He's doing all these things, but people fail to realize that what has built Sean from where he was to what he is today is what has made Sean who Sean is today.
Yeah.
And they don't want to deal with, losing a spouse. They don't want to deal with losing, on the verge of losing everything and dealing with health issues and medical bills and becoming a sheriff's deputy and going through all the trials and tribulations that he went through to get to where he is today.
Yeah, and not to mention the incredible amount of work that goes on every day. I think that's the biggest thing people misunderstand about entrepreneurship is the amount of work. It's a lot of work. I think the biggest thing that was hard for me to get through my mind when we had, I would call them team members, people that worked in our company, was guys would come up to me and they say, I want to make $100,000 staining fences for you. And they're working for me. And I say, okay, no problem. We're just, here's the path to do it. You're staining fences. I want you to talk to all the neighbors and I want you to sell them fence staining jobs too. We're going to give you 10% of everything you get there. And I can say average job is $1,800, 180 times 10. There's $18,000 or roughly right. 180 times 10, $1,800. You can make an extra $1,800 a month if you just sell 10 jobs. And then on top of your regular pay. And then let's talk about overtime. You're quitting work at 3:00. It gets dark at 8:00. When I did it, when I was your age, I'm running to 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm not saying that that's good or healthy, but that's what I did. And a lot of blue collar, a lot of people in the trades, you're pulling long hours to get there. And you're making, you're making time and a half or double time if you're doing that, and they're not taxing tips or they're not taxing overtime anymore. But, and so I just clearly laid out the path, like here's how you make $100,000 staining fences as an employee. Oh man, I can't do that. I got to be home at 3:00. I mean, I want to live some kind of life, right? And I'm like, okay, the choice is yours. But if you want to do this, the work is there. And then on the entrepreneur side, like a lot of guys want to start a business and run it, and like they want to quit at 5:00. And I'm like the stuff that you do from 9 to 5 isn't what makes you successful. Usually it's the stuff you do from like 5 to midnight or 1 a.m. that makes you successful. And I think I did a lot of that. I know Sean King's done it. I'm sure you've done it.
Yeah.
But to get where you're going, it's an immense amount of work, and you got to be willing to commit to that and do it.
Yeah, we are in. When I had my wife on, we did a show called A Wife's Perspective, and that was one of the things that she really wanted to emphasize is that everybody has a dream of why they start their own business, and it's important to realize that it takes a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of burning the candles on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna, there'll be that one case out of 9 out of 10 where one person will be able to do what you're saying. They either have they ran into a lot of money that they can invest in certain things to make the business successful right off the bat. But for most people, it takes getting up before daylight and calling it quits when it's dark outside.
Telling saying them bedtime prayers with the kids on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm on the way home. I'm an hour and a half away. Let's go ahead and say the bedtime prayers because I'm not going to be there till 10 o'clock. Right. And that's what guys do. Older people, when I was, you're a little older than I am, Justin, but older people than us had always said, "What, do it in your 20s while you got
Mm-hmm.
the energy." And that's probably a good lesson to pound into people's heads. If you're like between the ages of 16 and 30, dude, you got so much free time, free energy. And if you start during that time and just put your energy and effort into your business, by the time you hit 30, things are going to be so much like it's going to be smooth sailing by then. Generally, you'll have a lot of the learning curve worked out. Things are built up if you're into scaling and building your business. And and by the time you're 40 and your energy is a little bit less or 50, you don't have to do it because you did it in your 20s. So if you a lot, what do they say? If you play in your 20s, you'll have to work your butt off in your 30s and 40s. If you work your butt off in your 20s, you can play in your 30s and 40s, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 51. I've got this bad habit. Once I turn whatever number it is, 50, 51, I just start telling people I'm a year older because I'm closer to that year than I am to the previous year. But yeah, I mean, I take pride in working hard. It's one of the things my dad always taught me. My grandfather was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
If you could rely on a hard worker, you want a Menezes working with you because if there's a Menezes there, they'll kick butt. You don't have to worry about if the work's getting done, if it's not getting done. And but like what you're saying, I mean, I hurt. I feel aches and pains. When I'm going up and down a ladder because we're staining a ceiling and we're doing it by brush because it's inside of a house and you can't spray it. I don't know how many times I'm going up, 10, 18 rungs of stairs. And at the end of the day, I come home and I'm just like, oh man, why is my back hurting so much? Oh, that's right. I just spent 8 hours.
I've been looking up all day.
And then you're up and then you're like, drip in your eye. And
have you seen the neck thing in the pillow that you can wear and you have a pillow and you're looking up all day? You're painting.
Yeah. But
dude, we've been there, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough, but it's not that hard.
No.
You know what I mean? It's not, you've been in the military. You've done way harder things than this. So this isn't a bad industry to be in.
Oh yeah. I've had my head sleeping on a rock and that was the softest thing we could find. And you were just grateful to get a couple hours of shut eye. That's one thing I don't take for granted is sleep. I love sleeping. When I can get a good night's rest, it's one of the great blessings that I enjoy because we've gone through 48 to 72 hours of sleep deprivation training where you don't sleep at all. Or you find people who you get a good battle buddy who has your back and you watch guard and, you'll be back to back to each other and you're holding each other up while you fall asleep. And you're basically one eye's open, one eye's closed. And you're basically looking to see if one of the instructors is trying to catch you sleeping. So yeah, I mean, but back to what we were talking about, you can do it when you're young, do it because your body can take a lot more abuse You don't need as much rest because you're not as old or as frail as your body begins to get experienced and go through things. And so those are your glory days of being able to produce when you're younger.
Yep, and you're creative, and you got all the energy to work behind the scenes. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I just had a customer that we did 7 or 8 years ago, and we're going back to redo his deck this year. And the one thing he told me was, "You're not going to be out there until 9:00 at night, are you?" And I'm like, "No, we should be done way before that." And he's like, "Well, last time you were here, you were out here with you had one of those setup lights shining to get the deck done." And
that's because I had another deck to do tomorrow.
Yeah. He's like, "We kind of thought it was weird when you showed up at 4:00, when most people are going home for the day, and you're showing up to start. And, and you did get the deck done, but you left, it was pretty dark." And it just reminded me of, 8, 9 years ago. That's just how we did it. You'd get up early in the morning, you start, and you would end when you had.
That's the way. Yeah, man. That's the way I was raised. We worked. We worked way too many days. We worked way too many nights, and that's just the way it goes. That's what you do. And so I think the first part of my career was spent working like that. And now the next part is creating a place where people who work in our company don't have to work those hours. So we pay our guys all winter long. We keep them on staff. We found a way to kind of like eliminate the seasonality out of the wood care business, and they don't, they get overtime for sure, but most guys want it, but they're not pulling super late shifts like we used to. And it, part of me is kind of like, well, you're missing out, because that's where the magic happens. But the other part of me says, I'm really proud these guys can go home and see their kids, tuck them in bed at night while they're little. Yeah. I didn't get to do that. And, but I'll wear that cross. I'll carry that cross, or whatever the saying is, I will wear that with pride. And that's the way it is.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump in. We when I posted about this opportunity to talk with each other, I asked the folks had some questions. There were a couple of questions that were brought up, and if we can discuss those questions, I think people will be appreciative of that.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
So one of the main questions that I've been seeing is, how do you determine the difference between a water base and an oil based stain when you go to a deck, fence, cabin?
Well, we probably do it the same way you do. I guess the first thing I'll say is our core customer for our staining business in Nashville is a fence or deck that's 3 years old or less, that's never been stained. So we're going for low hanging fruit. We're going for the easy jobs, the easy cleans, the easy stains or restains. We try to avoid strip jobs and things like that, but they come in, right? And so if you get into a circumstance when you want to test it, you're going to test it with a solvent. There's a water-based solvent and a petroleum-based solvent. The water-based solvent will remove a water-based paint. The petroleum solvent will remove an oil-based stain. And so the two solvents are one, mineral spirits. Wipe a little mineral spirits on a rag, rub the surface. If stain comes off on the rag, use a white or a light colored rag. Then you've got an oil-based stain. If nothing comes off, then try it with denatured alcohol. And if that brings color off when you rub it, then you've most likely got a water-based stain. And most guys, when you've been doing it as long as we have, I would say that you probably look at it and tell 90% of the time. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what that is. When you've been doing it long enough, you can almost say that's about a 7-year-old Cabot Australian timber oil in honey gold or honey teak color. I can tell exactly what that is. But when you're new, the old solvent trick works really well.
Yeah, and I know here, I mean, I can speak for the Omaha, Lincoln area. We don't use the solvent thing because most of the times, and again, for us or for me, when I walk up to a deck and I see it's either very shiny, I can tell right away it's a film forming. And then obviously if it's anything more than a semi-transparent, it's going to either be a water base.
Solid color.
The likelihood of finding an oil base solid stain anymore is very rare in our market. Sherwin-Williams is looking to bring bring their oil-based semi or their oil-based solid stains back, but the cost differential is so great that most painters who typically use the solid stain are not going to spend twice as much for an oil base compared to the water.
Yeah.
Because it's going to cost at least that much to buy an oil solid stain.
I hear you. Yeah. I've thought about that. I've thought about us doing that too, but it costs more money, but it's going to be super, super strong and long lasting.
Yeah. 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 We did an oil solid deck maybe 10 years ago. And the customer called and wanted a maintenance coat on it. And Christian, who's doing our sales, he went by there yesterday. He's like, Dad, this deck doesn't even, besides it looking dirty, it still looks really good. And I'm like, well, and he's like, what kind of stain did we use? And I'm like, well, I think that was an oil. Mm-hmm. So I called Sherwin-Williams up and I'm like, hey, do you guys happen to carry that dark cloud in oil? And they're like, no, we don't carry oil anymore, oil solid. So you're going to have to put a water base. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, good luck putting water-based solid on top of that oil. It's going to stick maybe a year, if that.
Well, you never know. Maybe there is a need for that, and so you never know. Watch me. I like ideas like that, And so that's something that has been on my mind. It's like back in the day, solids were all oil-based, mm-hmm. and they worked really well. And so that technology is still around, and we can still do that. And so, anyways, maybe that's something people would be interested in. Maybe that is a need that the industry needs.
Yeah, I mean, if they're so for our company, we do a lot of Lodge Brown. That's a typical color. I guess it's as close to sable if we were to compare the two colors that Expert has, and it typically goes very well if we're doing a rail and then doing an oil floor. It'll go well with the pecan. It'll go well with the cedar. It'll go well with the chestnut because it has that brown hue to it. And but if you were to come out with a bunch of solid colors, that would probably be the problem is just the mass colors that folks have. Like dark. That's
the problem. Yeah, we used to do water-based solids, and we had a really good water-based solid. And the problem was Home Depot's got 750 colors. And we wanted to specialize in a few. And so we just said maybe not a good fit for the industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a conversation I've had with our sales rep with Sherwin is, is it possible to stock, a handful of colors that you would carry? And it's like, well, you want this handful. This other company, they have 5 other colors that they want. And then, company Charlie wants 5 colors from both of you, and we're not going to stock 15 to 20 colors.
Yeah, that's
we only had you use 20 gallons to 50 gallons a year out of it. It makes no sense to financially invest into that.
But back to the question though, sure enough, in time you'll be able to just tell by looking.
Yeah. Yep. And then another question that's come up was pre-staining. So a lot of folks are still doing the dunk tank. Mm-hmm. That you spoke about a few years ago. And then now, of course, you have the stain machine, which is a phenomenal idea. It's a phenomenal tool that you can have in your toolbox, and it does a fantastic job. And so they're wondering what's the biggest difference between pre-staining with a dunk tank compared to pre-staining with the stain machine?
Well, first of all, I would say obviously one's a tank, one's a machine. I'm a wise guy, but to fill up a dip tank, you're talking 20, 25, 30 gallons to get something done. And that's fine if you're doing, one color over and over all the time, or you've got plenty of stain. With the stain machine, the hopper holds 5 gallons and you can stain a ton of boards with just a 5-gallon bucket. And it reclaims all the stain, it back brushes everything. So I would say they're just different tools for different techniques. One's probably a little dirtier or sloppier than the other. The dip tank probably would be definitely more messy, and you gotta drain everything back out. The pre-stain machine, everything's filtered. So, sawdust is a big problem when you're pre-staining, especially rough cut material. and you can filter that out. With the dip tank. The sawdust falls down into the stain, and so you've really got to do a good job of filtering the stain when you empty your dip tank. And I would say a pre-stain machine is 10 times easier and faster to clean up than a dip tank. Price point, you can probably build a dip tank for half the cost, like a really good dip tank. I don't want to say really good. You can build a really decent dip tank cheaper than you can for probably half the cost of a pre-stain machine. And there's a lot of differences. If I'm doing fine finish work, smooth stuff, it's going to be the pre-stain machine all day long. If I'm doing straight up rough cut stuff, dip tank works, and stack your boards up vertical. So there's different strokes for different folks, but we have big powered machines that'll run like 15,000 boards a day. We have dip tanks, and we have several of the small stain machines. And today they were running tongue and groove through the small stain machine. We had a discovery day today. People were walking through the factory and they were like, "You actually use that machine?" And I'm going, "Yeah, we stain a whole log cabin with this thing in a half a day." So yeah, the little machines work great. And we've iterated them, and we're going to continue to iterate those machines and get them better and better. And they work great. Another advantage you have with the machine is the legs come off. You can throw it in the back of your truck. You can take it and do it on the job site. You can't do that with a dip tank. And, and I hate talking about dip tanks because a lot of guys, they don't think with safety in mind when they build them. And generally with a dip tank, you build a dip tank, and then on top you build a shelf for all the lumber to stack on vertically, and that drips back into the tank. And you really have to build that smart. You've got to build it. You need to anchor it to a concrete floor. You need to have it up against a wall, bolted down, and you need to have the wall or the shelf that your lumber sits on is that's a 90-degree angle, right? You need to kick that back, and your shelf has to be at 90 degrees to it so that the lumber stays. You just don't want to get in a situation where 1,200 pounds or 1,500 pounds of lumber falls down on somebody in your shop or whatever. And so you just don't have that danger with a pre-stain machine. So I would say, I guess if I could only have one, that would be a tough question. I wouldn't only have one. I would have both. And if I'm trying to run 5,000 fence pickets brown, give me the dip tank. If I'm trying to do tongue and groove ceiling boards, 200 ceiling boards, I'm trying to do, 500 cedar shakes. I got a guy wants me to do some cabinet fronts for him. Somebody wants me to paint some trim. I got another guy sending me D-log siding to do. I need 50 2x6s done. I'm going with the stain machine all day long.
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned, just the investment of filling that tank in order to be able to dip the lumber in there is significant. That you're not going to go through 2 or 3 different colors to dip if you're having to put 20 to 30 gallons of stain in that tank. Whereas with the stain machine, like you mentioned, I mean, you can go to the job site, set it up, and run the boards right there. And I think it was Chris Berry that has a video out there that's really nice with the dip or with the stain machine, where he's running them through and then he's just putting them up along the themselves and already drying out and laying right in place.
So Chris was telling me that they had a cabin job, and they did the math that they would charge $12,000 and take 2 weeks to stain this log cabin. I think that's a little slow. I think $12,000 sounds right, but I think 1 week, but I like to rock and roll. Painters tend to be a little more methodical. And, but anyways, let's say it's a week-long job for $12,000. He said they went to the job site and they already had the lumber delivered, and it's kiln dried, wrapped up cedar. Like, they stained it, they pre-stained it. They did it in a half a day, and they did it. They stained all 6 sides. So it's a way better protection for the lumber. And so if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. If you can do a $12,000 job for $8,000 and you do it in a half a day, like you're so far, you have an extreme competitive advantage because other people cannot touch you. How can he do that job for that price and in that speed and that quality? And I think the pre-stain machine, so many stain contractors are scared to death of pre-stain lumber. But I'm going to tell you, Dallas, Texas, pre-stain lumber has built the stain market. It's the biggest stain market in the country. The second biggest stain market in the country is probably the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon. Washington State, Seattle, pre-stain. It's been around for 40 years over there, and pre-stain builds the stain market. So I think guys need to don't whine about it and jump on board and start offering pre-stain services. This is how you work in the wintertime. This is how you work when it's raining. This is how you do it. And so you just got to get outside the box. But if you're not thinking about pre-staining, man, I think you're missing the boat.
Yep. We full disclosure, we don't have one pre-staining job yet. But every year, come October through January, February, and then throughout all the rest of the regular season, I'm asking deck builders, fence builders, tongue and groove guys, hey, give me a shot. I'll come out, I'll stain it, and you just pay for the stain. I'll give you my labor for free just so I could show you the outcome. And our biggest hiccup that I personally have gotten from folks is that they've tried pre-stained lumber before, typically from Menards, Home Depot, and it's with a crappy product to start with. The stain itself is bad, and then the wood itself probably wasn't dry enough to even be stained in the first place, but they went ahead and stained it because they're just mass producing this pre-stained lumber. And then when they put up the fence, I'll just use ABC Company, bought a couple of pallets of pre-stained chestnut, whatever chestnut was for this specific company. And they unload the pallet, they start putting up the pickets, and they get into the first 3 or 4 layers of pickets, and it looks like chestnut. And then from there on out, it doesn't even look like it got a licking of stain on there. It looks just like bare wood. And so a lot of these, at least the fence contractors that I've talked to, they've had a negative taste or negative experience with the pre-stained from a mass producer of it. And so I think it's just a matter of time, because a lot of these fence companies were also hesitant on staining. And a lot of them now just, they don't stain it, but they'll call me and say, hey, here's customer Mrs. Jones, and she just needs her fence stain. Give her a call. So it's just a matter of that leap of faith on their part. And I see it eventually jumping here in this market. I know I talked to Matt Warner, and he's all on board with it. And it's just a matter of folks, taking that leap of faith.
Yeah. And I think anytime you have a mass produced product, a lumber product, especially, you take a chance of having some issues. I mean, Master Halco, Alta, all the big producers, the Menards, they all have had bad runs of pre-stained product. Generally speaking, they're running it right out of the sawmill, so they're staining green lumber. So they cut the tree down, tree goes through the mill, it gets sawn into pickets, and it immediately goes through a stain box. And so, green wood is wet, and it's maybe a little more wet over here than it is over there, and that means the color variance is going to be a problem. So that's the way it goes. My advice to that would be, if their tongue and groove guys, show up with samples with 3 different colors on tongue and groove, the same tongue and groove that they use. If it's a fence guy, bring them a sample of what your chestnut looks like. If it's decking, here's some samples of pre-oiled Ipe, right? If you go after the guys with vision, and that's the way I would do it, is do the samples.
Yeah. Nothing ever comes easy, and so it's just a matter of being consistent and not giving up on it. I talked to a couple of guys who are in the northwest, or not northwest, but the mid America area. You got your northeast folks, and a lot of us are like, well, how are we going to do this in the winter? It's like, look, man, the idea is there. It works. It's just a matter of getting that first person to bite and give it a shot. And then once you start showing that you can produce a product that's beneficial, not just to the customer, but to them. And in the long run, you eliminate overspray issues that most folks have issues with to start with, that you could just pre-stain it and have it there and it's ready to go. And you're not worrying about plastic, wind, rain, and then of course, overspray getting on neighbors' houses. But once you get that first person to bite on it, I think it's just a matter of the next person seeing what the Joneses are doing and wanting the same thing.
It's 100%, man. Anytime we do pre-stained lumber in a certain part of the country, it's not it's 2 months, 3 months, the competitors are calling. hey man, you got any of that pre-stained lumber? And so, that's the way it goes. The thing that you guys have to understand is the psychology of this, is that the fear of loss is greater than the want for gain. So when you build a new fence that's unstained, there's, they maybe want to take care of it, right? But there's not a really big, it's not necessarily this thing that they have to do. They're not going to lose anything. They may potentially lose the way the fence looks over time, or the structural integrity of the fence over time. But when you sell them a pre-stained product, the fence builder, the homeowner, whoever, they receive your product that's been pre-stained, or the fence builder's lumber, and you pre-stained it, and that fence is built and it's already stained. First of all, it's a mind shock because they've never seen that before. They go, wow, what is that? I've never seen a gray fence or a black fence or a brown fence installed before. What is that? And you explain what it is, so now the neighbors like it or whatever, but also the homeowners they're just floored. They're blown away, just like they're blown away when you stain their new fence, but they're blown away in a different way because you didn't have to stain it. They feel smart. They did something outside the box. But the fear of loss is greater than the want for gain. So that the way it looks, they're going to lose that. When they build that pre-stained fence, in time, they're going to lose the way that looks unless you're there to maintain that wood for them. And so that's the big opportunity is, let a guy come to my town and put up 100 pre-stained fences, because guess who's going to follow right behind them, drop a business card. Hey, in 2 years and 3 years, that fence is probably going to need a maintenance coat and maybe washed. We're the guy. We know how to do it. We're trained. And in fact, if you want, I'll call you and I'll remind you that we need to get this done. We'll take care of it. You want to keep it looking that way, right? And so, that's the sell, and that's the way it goes. And if you can be the guy, you want to be the stain guy, right? So offer that service to your customers, offer that service, because you're going and talking to all the fence guys anyways. You say, hey, you build fence, we stain fence, we should be friends. So if you offer him pre-stained lumber, he's not going to use pre-stained lumber on every single job. He's still going to have 80% of the jobs or 70% of the jobs, maybe 95% of the jobs he does is not going to get stained. He's going to remember you. But if you do the pre-stained lumber, you're going to also get that business too, because they're going to have some customers that want to go that extra mile on it. So I think, again, I'm sold on it, as you can see.
Yeah. And that answers a lot of the next question, which is with Gopher Wood, which is a pre-stained lumber that you offer to you sell to distributors. Is that correct? And then so the local fence builder.
Yep. So pre-stained lumber, we have a product called Gopher Wood. It's just a pre-stained lumber product. We do it Western red cedar, incense cedar, Japanese import cedar. We buy the Japanese, not the Chinese stuff. There is quite a bit of difference. And so we run that. We touch every piece of wood. We have a really low coal rate. I won't say it's perfect. It's a lumber product. There you'll still get a cracked board here or there, but our coal rate is probably less than like 1 or 2%. Whereas if you go buy a bundle of wood at Home Depot, it's probably 10 or 15%. So it's a good product, and I think that it's a good option for the people who are just never going to stain a fence. The contractors who are never going to do it, they don't have anybody to do it, and they still want to offer that. Pre-stained lumber is a great option. Gopher Wood's a great option for that.
Yeah, I agree. And then, as you mentioned before, with as we were talking about the pre-staining with Gopher Wood, again, fence gets built, it's already pre-stained. What a great opportunity to be friends with that builder, so that they can pass along your info to the customer. Hey, in a couple of years, this is going to need a touch-up coat or a maintenance coat. Here's, our preferred staining contractor that we refer, and they actually use the same stain that we've got on your fence right now. They'd be the people to call, to make sure that your fence is maintenance coated from here on out. That's one of the things Empire Fence and Netting and we are doing is when they install a Gopher Wood fence, they pass along our information to their customers so that they know when that fence needs to be redone, this is who you call to make sure that it stays just as pretty as it looks today.
Yep, that's a sweet deal. That's the deal I think every guy needs in every town.
Well, Matt Warner is a pretty amazing guy, and he's got some amazing people that work there. And again, sweet deal, right?
Matt Warner is expected to land in a helicopter
Uh-oh.
right out there tomorrow. He's coming here in a helicopter tomorrow.
Nice. Is he
they
bringing
call
Trump
me,
with him?
Yeah, he called and said, "Is it okay if we land a helicopter at your place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, come on, let's go."
At least he asked ahead of time, right?
Yeah, well, I think FAA says you got to have the owner's permission to land there.
Yeah.
So.
You'd be sitting there like, well, Matt should be showing up. Why is that helicopter coming in closer and closer?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Knowing Matt, he'd probably like parachute out, with a big
That's what I would do.
Empire parachute and just glide his way in and have a perfect landing.
I'd want to reenact the Operation Market Guard and jump from like 400 feet. And there we go.
Well, that's awesome. All right. So you talked about that you had a discovery day today. What's the discovery day about?
Well, I've thought really hard and long about what my mission is, and I think it's kind of been clear over the last few years with the podcast, with Staining University, with our Facebook group. Like we're passionate about helping others take control of their life. And if you're like me and you're a regular guy and you're kind of scared to jump out into maybe a huge industry, like how do you compete in the HVAC business today as a little guy, right? How do you compete as a painting contractor when there's 50 franchises? And even the fence business is that way now. There's the market is so advanced. It's hard to just jump out there as a regular guy and have the confidence to go. And so, but the staining business is not that way. We still are in an underdeveloped and a developing industry. And in most markets, people don't you can still be the first guy in your market to really professionalize the staining business. Sure, there's guys that are doing it in your town, but you can really push and be the stain person in your community. And so my mission basically is to help others do in 1 year what took me 10 years to do. And one of the ways we do that is by doing, Staining University events and teaching people that way. But sometimes, I'll say this, for probably 5 years, people have asked me more than 100 times, how do we get our own location? How do we be a part of what you're doing? How do we get stain and seal experts of Cincinnati or of Austin, Texas, or whatever? And I just said, I don't know, man. I don't know. And so we thought about that long and hard. And I don't know, middle of last year or early last year, we decided, it probably makes sense for us to do a franchise. And the reason a franchise, it's as an owner, if we opened 50 locations and we owned all of them, it would be immensely more profitable, immensely more valuable, and probably really easier because we would control everything. Franchises means you own the business, the other person owns the business. And so I think it's a great way for us to help business owners own their own thing, but basically roll out the red carpet for them and give them a yellow brick road to walk down and just say, here's the rule book. And so I in 2015, we rebranded from Central Tennessee Fence Staining. Hang on, I have a prop. So this was my first sign. This was my first company, Central Tennessee Fence Staining. And we rebranded. And I'm one of those person, I'm pretty faithful, I guess I would say. And I just had the faith that it was going to come to me what the name was. And Stain and Seal Experts, the name came to me. And it was the weirdest thing because I knew it wasn't about me because I'm not the expert here. I'm trying to figure out how to be one, but I'm not the expert. And it was Stain and Seal Experts, and it was plural. And then just in my mind, I knew, we're going to be everywhere. It's going to be a lot of people. We're all going to collaborate and work together. And so the franchise business is born. And it's been something I've wanted to do, just didn't know how to do it. And so we partnered with some people that we consulted with, and they really helped us get that going. And we hired some talent that's worked on some really huge franchise companies. And so now the goal is to help the guys that are already in the staining business that are bouncing their head off of this glass ceiling. And they say, hey man, we like what you're doing. We've been following your stuff, but we want to do more. And we want to grow faster. And, or maybe we want to go full time. And that's what the franchise business is all about, is just giving that opportunity to help some more guys go harder and faster. And everybody wearing the same uniform, flying the same flag, just makes it easier for us to have a huge name, because some of the things that I really want to unlock for our industry, we sort of coined the term professional wood care.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we didn't make those words up, but we've coined that as the industry title, and we hope it sticks because we're not painters, we're not builders, we're professional wood care contractors. And so we really want to elevate that industry, and we want to unlock the ability to get spec'd in on projects like the Portland airport, all that wood that they did, that huge stain job. It was 8,000 gallons of stain. It was all overhead. It was multiple millions of dollars. Somebody got that, and it was probably a painting company. We want that job. The Ark in Kentucky, the huge Noah's Ark, we want that job. And so we have such a huge network, guys like Matt Warner that are doing huge things, the biggest fence companies in the world, the biggest deck builders in the world. We want to partner with them. We want anywhere in America, we want to be able to put them in touch with somebody who owns their own staining business that's doing it on a high level. So anyways, you can tell I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Well, and it's an interesting thing because like here in Nebraska, when we do our taxes, there is not a category for a deck and fence restoration company. We get put underneath a painter tax code because it's not really recognized as its own identity or its own industry. And it's one of the things that I've been trying to mentally push when I talk to somebody is that we're not just a deck stainer, we're a professional wood care specialist. And we're going to come out and we're going to do what is professionally necessary to treat and care for your wood, and not just come out and blast it with water or with bleach or with whatever chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take the proper processes and steps to make sure that it's done correctly, efficiently, as well as conscientiously, so that we're not just throwing chemical around. We'll take care for your environment, your landscaping, your surrounding areas. So we want to be known as professionals, not just a guy who shows up and he's going to throw stain on my deck and hopefully it lasts more than a year and I don't have to call him back months later. So, I mean, it's definitely a need, and I love the idea. I mean, you and I have talked. I think I asked you 3 years ago, hey, have you ever thought about a franchise opportunity or something like that? Or we were sitting at the dinner table.
Yeah.
It makes sense. We see all kinds of franchises out there, and when you've got a good leader who's leading by example, why wouldn't you want to, jump in on board and follow the train?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's. We want to do something. We want to do something that basically the wood care business changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to change others, so I'm excited about that because, man, I can't tell you, many of you guys, everybody struggles with different things, but I was just in such a place. I was just beating my head against the wall. I was burnt out. I was struggling and I wanted to do something different. And I didn't, but by the time you're 27 or 28 years old, I was a fireman. While I was in the fence company running that, and then I'm in the fire service, and that just didn't work out for me. I kept scoring like the top of the class for Nashville Fire Department, and I never would get hired. They're hiring these guys that were like yes men and guys that were really out of shape. And I thought, man, what's going on? I aced the physical test, I aced the written test. Why am I not getting a job? And so I kind of gave up on that. And by the time you're 25, even when you're 25, you're going, man, my options are running out here. I don't have a college education. What can I do? If I quit this family fence business, like I just got to go get a job somewhere. And maybe good jobs are easier to get now than they were then. I don't know, maybe not. So the stain business, like it gave me an option, and I wouldn't have had this option if I went into some other industry. So anyways, I think that option is still there. And while it's there, I think we should take advantage of it. There's a lot of guys out there that are like, I want to do something different and I want to be in control. And so. Yep.
Well, when I was in my 20s, I never imagined staining.
Yeah.
Absolutely never imagined staining. And now that I do it, I absolutely love it. I have a young kid across the street who started working with me this week. And, what did I tell my wife yesterday? I don't see him as an employee, but more as a mentorship, because he's a young man, high school dropout, never really had any job in his whole life, and he's having to learn very basic skills. But but doing what we're doing, he's learning simple things that will affect him the rest of his life.
If you can teach him, if you can teach a man how to work, it'll go anywhere. Like your dad taught you how to work. My dad taught me how to work. And if you know how to work, then you know what that means when I say you know how to work. It doesn't matter if you put me on a lawn crew, on a roofing crew, on a framing crew, in an emergency room, on a fire engine. It doesn't matter. If you know how to work, you know how to look ahead, you know how to spot things, you know how to be on your toes and pivot, and you know how to carry your weight. And if you can teach that, this business will teach you that. And you carry those things with you forever. They go everywhere.
Yeah. We were driving home yesterday after.
Is this the guy that was passed out sleeping in the truck?
Yeah, he was worn out.
Dude, my dad would not let anybody sleep in the truck.
He should have drank at least a couple of these. And I told him at the end of the day, I was like, look, dude, you were up early. We don't stop for lunch when we're in the car. Eat whatever you have for lunch. If you want to stop for lunch, great. Go to the truck and eat. And but back so just teaching simple things. He's not afraid to talk to people. And I told him, hey, we're going to be. We may see a customer, we may not see a customer. We don't smoke on the job site. We don't cuss. If you want to listen to whatever you're listening to, because we don't want to intrude on the customer's living area by any kind of negative influence. We want to make it a positive experience. And so I was telling my wife, he's got great manners. He's very respectful. And a lot of simple things that I take for granted to be simple are a little more difficult because, he's never had a pump sprayer handler, wand in his hand and just adjusting his hand. And I'm just like, just turn the hand, but it's like, calm down, Justin. Don't hurt him.
Yeah, I think for hard charging guys like you and me, it's exceptionally difficult and hard. And for probably most of you entrepreneur types, when you see guys that don't get it or don't have the experience, it's so hard to just not blow your top. But I think that's, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I think if the guy who's 2 steps ahead of maybe the other guys, like you're 2 steps ahead, so you can show the way, right? We're the scout. And so I think our obligation and opportunity is to make a difference for them. So it's hard to swallow that sometimes.
Yep.
But you're like, okay, I'm here for a reason.
Yep. But I'll tell you what, I told him to be here at 7 and he was here at like 6:45 knocking on the door. Let me know he's ready to go.
Oh man, that's, if he does that on the first day, that's impressive. If he does it every day.
Little victories, like he may lack some things here, but he's got great strengths in other places. And, my wife and I were talking about it, like he might not be a crew member, but more of a helper, go grab the hoses, go set things up and slowly work them into where you want them to be. And especially with his confidence, I think once he starts feeling a little more confident and maybe not as afraid he's going to lose the job because he doesn't know what he's doing, other things will start kicking in. And I've got high hopes for him. I really hope he works out.
That's good.
Let's see. Oh, one other question. Michael Hall, I know you saw the post that he was asking about pigment transfer. And I know you said you would have it. You got it covered.
Sure.
You want to touch base on that? And share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So pigment transfer. So anytime you're using non-drying oils, penetrating stains with non-drying oils in them, there's a chance you can get pigment transfer. If you use film forming stains, there's a chance you can get peeling or adhesion issues or cracking. And so every stain has its pros and cons. The stain you're talking about is expert stain and seal. So there's drying and non-drying oils in that stain. There's an alkyd. It's an alkyd drying oil. It's not like a linseed oil, but they work the same. They're drying oils. And so when the stain's heavily pigmented and you use it on, especially like a semi-solid color, and you put it on a covered porch or a really brand new, fresh, like a brand new pine deck or even some cedar wood, there's a chance that you cannot get enough penetration that wood will not absorb enough of the stain to get it off the surface. And so you could be left with some stain on the surface, and that stuff could come up, especially if it's like 100-degree day. You go from cold weather to hot weather, things like that. So we always recommend semi-solids. You don't use them on covered decks. You don't want to use a black stain on a deck. But sometimes, like the guys over in Ohio, they showed a deck that they stained 2 years ago with black, and they said pigment transfer is minimal. The stain held up very well. And so the moral of the story is that a good operator in general will have very few pigment rub-off problems. And many times you will get pigment transfer when you just don't expect it and you don't know why. But the same thing goes for stain failures. There's sometimes you get wood that you just don't know why. The stain, something's going on. This wood, it's absorbing way more, it's absorbing way less. The stain's not holding up in this section here, no matter what product you use, and we can't figure it out. And so a lot of it comes down to unknown things that you just can't know. We had a contractor here in Nashville. He put pecan stain on a customer's deck, and he had some pigment rub-off transfer issues. And he kept having problems, and he said, well, I wiped it down, I recoated it, I did mineral spirits, I don't know what to do. And I said, let me just come out here with you and meet the customer. Well, this guy's mad, and this guy's an older guy. He's upset. It's tracking stain or oil on the house. And I said, we're the manufacturer, and I'm here to tell you this is truly not a problem that we typically have. In the grand, if you look at the grand scope of what we do, we're talking hundreds of thousands of gallons of stain a year we sell. And we have maybe a dozen people a year say, hey, we had pigment transfer. And so it's a small issue, but it is an issue. So anyways, we go out on this guy's back deck, and the deck looks great. It's stained. It looks good. And he had a laminate floor in the house. And if he walked on the deck and he walked on the laminate floor, you could see his footprints. If you rubbed that off the floor with a rag, that nothing came up, but you could see it. And we kept messing around and looking at it. I rubbed it with a rag and all that. And I kept asking questions, and I kept coming back to the fact I was like, I knew in my mind, I said, this deck has been sealed before. It's had to have been sealed. And he said, oh no. And I kept kind of probing and asking these questions. And finally the guy got almost irate, and he said, this deck was never sealed. He said, I bought the best lumber you can get. I drove all the way to Menards and got it. And I said, whoa, back up. You went to Menards and got this? And he goes, yeah. And I said, Menards, they sell pre-sealed treated pine decking. I said, do you have any of that decking material left? And he goes, yeah, I've got it in my little shed over here. He goes and gets it out. He brings out this brand new piece of 2-foot long treated pine decking, and he lays it in front of me, and I grab a rag because we're using a rag. I open his water spigot, I wet the rag down, and I wring it out over the deck, and the water beads just stand up on it, like it had just had a fresh coat of silicone on top of it. And I said, aha, you bought the best lumber you could get. It's pre-sealed. That's why the stain's not sticking. And we gave him a prescription, like, here's what you really need to do probably to fix that. And so those are unknowns, right? And so sometimes we get those unknown situations and we just can't account for them. And your customer many times will swear to you that nothing has ever been done to the fence or the deck. And so I'm not going to say that all the time that's the case, but sometimes it is. Bam, before he came to work for us, he was a stain contractor. And we went on a job site. He sent his crew. He might have scaled a little too fast. He sent a crew out without him. And this fence had basically a hard clear coat on it. And they stained it. And they said, the stain's not sticking to the fence. We can't figure out. I went out and looked at it, and I was like, well, of course not. It's got like an inch of polyurethane on top of it. Like, of course it's not going to stick. And the homeowner said, oh no, this is raw wood. We didn't do anything to it. And I was like, there's no chance. I'll bet my house on this, that there's something on this wood. And then finally it came out that the husband said, well, yeah, we put like Olympic clear sealer on it like 2 months ago, but we didn't think that was important. Right. And so some people will argue with you that nothing was done, even when it was. So that's something as a contractor, you really need to follow your gut And if you go to a job and you say, this doesn't look right, this looks like it's been sealed before, it's a problem. Those issues happen sometimes with strip jobs. You get a really hard coating and you strip it off and it looks gone, but still down in the wood down below, there's just something going on that we can't see that doesn't allow stuff to fully penetrate. And so those are the things we want to look out for. So I think best practices are going to be try not to use semi-solid stains on covered surfaces. If you are going to, if you do a covered deck, I recommend renting that floor sander. It's the best $60-$70 you can spend to get that top layer opened up with an 80 grit and have a better chance at absorption. And then save your semi-solids for super old wood. That's what they're made for. They're made for really old wood. And then if you're still running into issues on really old wood, again, I would say, well, maybe there's something going on, and go from there. But the number one thing I recommend that eliminated all of my problems with our penetrating stain and other penetrating stains was when we finish a deck. Most of you guys are taking pictures of the deck. It's done. You say it looks good. It's perfect. And the deck's still shiny. And when I leave a job site, my deck has a perfectly flat matte finish. That's because I wipe the whole thing down. So we finish staining the deck. We load the tools on the truck. The last 10, 15 minutes of the job, after everything's done, we're going to wipe that deck down. I don't care if you put the rags down under your feet and you skate across the deck. I don't care if you get on your hands and knees and wipe. You can put a towel over your orbital sander, your floor sander even. That works really well. You just throw the towel up over the pad and you can wipe the whole deck with a floor sander in about 10 minutes. If you wipe the decks down, the tops of the railings, anywhere where it's still shiny after 20 or 30 minutes, that will pretty much eliminate most of your problems. And I would bet that if you do that, it's going to eliminate probably 99% of any issue you have, aside from unknowns. And then other than that, I guess I will apologize for having a stain with a lot of pigment in it and a lot of oil, because the rest, it leaves it, comes down to that. Our stain is like pecan, less than 1% VOC. That means it's got a lot of oil in it. The oil goes into the wood. It protects the wood by preventing warping, cracking, and twisting. It goes down deep into the surface. So there are benefits to that, and there are health benefits to that too. And if every once in a while we have one that rubs off, like I'll replace the product. We'll bend over backwards to make it right with you. But unfortunately, sometimes that's just the way it goes with a stain like that.
Do you think there's anything with oversaturating the deck that could also cause that also?
Yeah, I think it could be because sometimes you'll see a deck that's perfectly fine and then it gets really super hot one day and a little oil rises up. And but sap rises up too, right? So you're going to get sap rising up. You could get oil rising up. Those are things that can happen. And so it could be the case. I tend to want to go to full saturation, but I don't ever want, like, even when we're fully saturating a deck, I don't want like big puddles sitting on the surface waiting for me to spread them out or wipe them up. So some guys, man, we get pictures, and generally it's the guy who says he's been painting or staining for 20 years and he sends his crew out and they've got this major failure and they're like, this thing, this product sucks. We had a problem. And then I say, well, send me some pictures. And then you can see where it looks like they literally poured it out in buckets. They used one of those high pressure, low volume, or high volume, low pressure sprayers, or a 12-volt pump, and they just flooded it on. And they watched the Ready Seal commercial and they just sprayed it on and walked away. And then I say, were you on this job site? And they go, oh, well, no. Well, I sent my guys out there. And I'm like, dude, you got an operations problem, man. You don't have a stain problem. I can tell you how to fix this today, and then I'm going to tell you how to fix it forever, And so a lot of the time, if it's an experience too, that'll get you.
Yeah, we ran into a problem 3 years ago. We had a guy who worked for us who, unfortunately, he was doing inappropriate things to himself. He was on meth and came to work one time just high as a kite. And he went out there, and he didn't want to work. Imagine that, an employee doesn't want to work that day. And so instead of sanding like he was supposed to, he pulled out the garden hose and began to soak the deck and told the homeowner that he was eliminating sawdust from getting into the atmosphere by soaking the deck. And,
give him an A for creativity.
oh, yeah. And her husband is one of the local radio personalities who's very well known on the radio here, talk radio. And so he calls me. He's like, I don't know who this guy is. I'm watching him on my camera, and he's out there having a heyday with the hose, and your deck is soaking wet. I mean, soaked, like puddles of water. And so I'm trying to get a hold of him, can't get a hold of him. Edwin, who's been with us for 5 years now, he gets there. And he's ready to about kill this guy because he was going out there and they were going to finish the job. And now he calls me. He's like, this mother effer, the deck's soaked. There's puddles of water. Like, you could go swimming on that deck. And I'm like, I know. Just get him off of that job site. Tell him to go home. So soaked the deck after we had already stripped it, after washed it, done everything we were supposed to. All that was left was maybe a minor sanding. So this thing gets wet. It dries out. We go out there, 8% moisture, and we stain it. Mahogany was the color. And not a week later, 100-degree weather, a week later, there's some transfer happening. And I go out there and I'm wiping some boards, absolutely nothing. Other boards, you get a tint of stain coming up. And I start talking to the lady, and she's very understanding. They're really good people. And I told him, I was like, I guarantee you this is that water. Those boards are saturated with water at the bottom, and it's just not curing correctly. So we ended up wiping it down, and then we actually ended up washing it, giving it another wash, and then we let it dry for like 2 solid weeks. And then we came back and gave it just a real fine finish coat because it still had a lot of pigment to it, and that alleviated it. But I'll never forget, the fact that there was so much moisture in those boards, in the board, that when we stained it, it just was not drying correctly. And so it kept pushing some of that oil out because it couldn't go down. It was a low-level deck. So there was nowhere for it to breathe or dry from underneath. And then we had a semi-solid deck where we had some problem. Not a lot of pigment transfer. We wiped it clean. We had sprayed it. And it was at that point that we decided we were not going to spray decks anymore. Because when we brush it, you can put ample enough stain on there, and then you can adjust, like you mentioned, like, hey, this deck is super thirsty, or this is new wood. We don't need to put, a real super heavy coat on there because that new lumber is not going to absorb it as well. And in fact, when we use semi-solid, I think we get what we normally do, 3 gallons on a deck. We probably can get away doing 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons on that deck because it's just not going to absorb, and we're not putting it on that heavy to, just to say we put 3 gallons on there. And that's helped us personally with the pigment transfer, is just making sure we're not oversaturating. So I was just wondering if that was something that you've seen or heard also from others that
I would
get if you oversaturate it.
I would think, oversaturating for sure. Usually you can see it though. It's like you see these decks where you know what chestnut's supposed to look like. Chestnut's one of those colors that if you put way too much on, it goes super dark. And if chestnut's looking really, really dark, you say, that's probably a little heavy. But I do think you're right. I think the bottom of those boards were just holding moisture and it couldn't go down. Did you keep the guy? Did you fire him or did you keep him?
Oh, no, he was
gone. Yeah, that was his last moment there. Yeah, no, I get it.
He called me last week asking if I needed any help, and I'm like, dude, I told you never to call me. Never. Don't even.
Hey, he needs to go work for somebody watering lawns.
Yeah. He'd probably be a good pool guy.
There you go. Yeah, but I think if you look at all the different types of stain, if you look at water-based stains, even other like modified oils. Most oil-based stains you get at big box retail, it's like 10% or less actual oil. And you look at those and you compare them to penetrating stains, no matter whose they are. Penetrating stains tend to just have the advantage in the fact that they're not going to peel, they're not going to crack, they're not going to chip. They don't have to require stripping to put before you recoat on top and do maintenance. You don't have really major temperature restrictions if it's too hot or if it's too cold. And a lot of like oil-based products from big box stores, if you put it on a little too thick, it'll stay tacky forever. There, you know, and there's nothing you can do about it because their formula is so strong that you can't just go out and sand it off or whatever. You're literally like, what are we going to do here? And you find yourself like stripping these things or sanding them away. And so with all the little negative things, like maybe a little pigment transfer or oversaturation problems that you can get, a lot of those can be avoided. But even if you can't avoid them, I still think penetrating oils hold the advantage compared to most other products out there. So for the contractor, for the guy who's using it every day for a living, who wants a repeatable process.
Yeah. Well, and then as an operator, as an owner who has employees, people, that we care about, even though the watering guy, I don't want him ever working for me again, but I don't wish him any ill will or anything like that. Having a stain like yours, just the health benefits that come with operating with that on a daily basis is huge. I've used TWP, Ready Seal. I've done Super Deck. I've done Olympic. I don't know. I named off the stains the other day. I was just kind of going through all the stuff that I've tried. And the one thing that always sticks out in my mind is coming home after trying your stain and using it all day and coming home and my wife asking me like, didn't you stain today? Yeah. Why don't you smell?
She thought you went fishing or something.
Yeah. Where have you been? What card do you have that I don't know about?
The stain it does have a little bit of a sweet smell sometimes, so that might get you in trouble, right? When I was a staining contractor, just running the thing by myself, my gloves would melt off of me because they would swell up. And about probably every 6 weeks, I had to get new boots because my boots would completely fall apart. Solvents would just destroy them. My truck smelled like stain. My car, my wife's car smelled like stain. My closet, when I would take a shower every night, I would look down and just see all the brown coming off of me. And when I started that podcast and I called all these old timers that have been staining, and they've been using all the brands that you've heard of, solvent-based stains, for many years, they said, I got diminished lung capacity. I should have wore a mask. I got cancer. I should have wore PPE. I should have took that more seriously. I have kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer, parts of their brain removed. And it's like, holy crap, man. And that's the same for all coatings, paints, for homes, for automotive. Automotive was the worst. Those guys painting cars without a mask. And so all of that stuff is suspended in solvents. And so, so the stain that we make it's the base is, or the carrier, which would be the solvent, is a food grade of oil. So, I don't recommend you put anything you shouldn't, that's not, any foreign body in your body, in your lungs, in your eyes, or on your skin. But I would much rather do a food grade oil get on me every once in a while than a solvent, a hardcore solvent. So.
Yeah, before I started adding a little drip worth of expert stain seal into my drink, we were averaging about 2 decks a day, and then we started adding, just enough to make a little oil residue in your drink, and now we easily do 3 decks a day. The only thing that changed was that little oil additive to it.
I have no comment on that. I can't say that. I can't say I can speak to nothing to that.
Just saying. No one, Ashley never called me and said, "Hey, next time you do a video, make sure you add stain to your drink." Edwin and we were joking around of how we can do something funny to see what kind of reaction we would get from the naysayers and haters out there. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just add some stain to my drink.
You should stain a deck.
I've had the disfortunate of, you're standing overhead and it drips and you just happen to be mouth breathing and it goes into your mouth and it's like, kind of tastes like lip gloss, the same kind of feeling. It's oil.
You should stain a deck with like a witch's broom or something and get some people's attention, or just a regular house brew.
So I'll tell you, I love the Stain and Seal University page on Facebook. There's some really outstanding, amazing people on there, but every once in a while you'll get somebody who just can't see anything and take it for with a grain of salt. And so there was a time where I was like, you know what, I'm going to sing and dance and stain at the same time and see what people say. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to rip my shirt off and pretend, and of course, Matt Warner and Rachel didn't like the fact that I ripped the My Salesman shirt up instead of a raggy shirt. And I'm like, well, it's a My Salesman pitch. You can rip it up and still get deck customers. But the reason I put it in my drink is because it's just for fun. What else are you going to do? You've been at job sites where it's you, yourself, and I, and we're out spraying and we're staining and, that's the best conversations I have with God is usually when I'm all by myself spraying a fence and, I'm just spraying away and I'm telling the Lord, whatever's going through my mind and in my heart. And I just come away with not just a pretty looking fence afterward. It's like, well, all right, that's what God wants me to do. Thank you, Lord, for listening. And thank you for answering what I need.
There you go.
Sometimes, you got to do certain things to be quirky and different and do whatever. Help pass the time go by.
Yeah. Well, we all have our own sense of humor. Mine is very dry and I think it's really funny, but most people don't. So it's the way it goes.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, we're at probably way too long already. I'm sure Rob's going to tell me, dude, you got to keep this shorter than what you're doing.
Yeah.
Anything you want to close off with before we say goodbye?
I think the length of a podcast, you just said it, you were out there spraying a fence, most guys, if you were like me, you're listening to this while you're out on a job site, you're either driving or you're spraying the fence, right? Most guys always got something in their ears. And so I think the long form is okay. I think you do the long form and then you break it in, you can pull segments out of it and make shorter form content for social media. But I think the average guy on the tools, no matter what industries he's in, he's got time on his hands. And so I'd rather be listening to something that that maybe I can learn from or take something positive away from than I had just be listening to some music. So I think there's nothing wrong with the length. Makes it harder to edit, but it's okay,
Yeah. Well, and that's what we do. We used to listen to music, and one person would be listening to this and that other group. And then now we just, I'll get a notification Joe Ever's on or Matt Warner's on or Rob Whitaker, whoever might be on. And it's always, you touched on it, the learning and growing. If you're not constantly educating yourself in good things, you're putting yourself two steps back because the next guy who is learning and catching up on new things and finding out what the newest and greatest thing is out there, they're going to be two steps ahead of you because they've taken the initiative to educate themselves, to train themselves in things that are important.
Well, that's
just listening
the
to
way
the
it
cool
goes.
song.
Yeah, you got to keep moving ahead, and you are who you surround yourself with, and many of us surround ourselves with ourselves. And so these podcasts and videos give us the ability to surround ourselves with others who think like-minded. So I would like to say, join the Facebook group. It's not, I don't want to say it's not moderated. We don't, there's other stain groups out there. And if you make a comment or say something about another stain brand, like the post is taken down and you're kicked out and they give you a warning. Staining University is not like that. We talk about all brands of stain because all brands of stain are relevant. We talk about all types of projects. So if you're thinking about getting in the stain business, I would highly recommend it. And there you will find the people who can mentor you or you can look up to or get inspiration from, because that's where you go right now. We can do that, and we can do it on a nationwide scale. You can go see what a guy's doing in New Zealand in the staining business on the group. And it's a really cool opportunity. And then the app, we have a free app, Justin. I don't want to pitch anything that you have to pay for from us, but we have a free app that it's totally free. It's called Stain and Seal Experts, and it's an iPhone app. I'm sorry for all you Droid users, but it will show you how to quote, measurements. It'll show you how to calculate how much stain you need. You can put your numbers in the back end, and it'll give you a price quote. So maybe take a look at those things and see if they're helpful for you.
Yeah, Christian used the app just the other day, and he was fascinated at how easy it was to, put in the style of fence that you were doing, if it was a dog ear, a shadow box, what it was, and then he just punched in the measurements of the fence, and he got a real easy,
It'll tell you the square footage. It'll tell you everything, and we're working on an integration with Jobber, and so the app, the CRM. So I've got some big plans for that. So that's going to be super exciting. You just go to a job site, you measure it right there, and boom, it spits everything. It just automatically sends it into Jobber, and you get your quote done. So you could literally go to a customer's house, quote their staining job. You don't even have to go to their house. You get their address, do it right through on your phone, and boom, the quote's done. 30 seconds. Yeah. I ran 7 to 10 estimates a day for 10 years driving. Mm-hmm. Dude, bid them. Don't bid them virtually. Use technology to your advantage, because you will never get that time back.
Yeah. Yeah. And once it's gone, it's gone. There's no way of getting it back. Yeah.
Yeah. Once your kid turns 15, they're 15, right?
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Anything you want to leave as far as if somebody's interested in the franchising opportunity or Gopher Wood?
For sure. For sure, man. I mean, we offer Gopher Wood lumber. It sells through wholesalers, and there's a lot of big fence companies that buy it. And so we'd just be honored if you'd be interested in that. We'd love to help you. We're more of an educational type salesperson. We're not a hard push. So if it's something you're interested in, you want some more information, we'll be glad to give it. On the franchise, again, we don't have venture capital money. We're not trying to build this thing up over 3 years and sell it for $50 million. We're actually trying to build a network of stain contractors that are already in the business, guys like you, guys like me, that want to just work together and be a part of something bigger, have a bigger name. Stain and Seal Experts is all about collaboration of experts. And so, if we get a big enough network, the guys up north that slow down in the winter, they can go down south. How cool would it be to go to Florida and stay in a couple of jobs with the Florida location, because they're swamped and you're on vacation doing jobs and still earning. And so, that and more, right? And so if you ssefranchise.com, as you go there, fill out the form. It doesn't matter if you're interested or today or interested next year, just fill out the form, and then we can reach out to you. But that's it, man. I don't know if you guys have been watching, but we've got a rebrand. We've rebranded Stain and Seal Experts. And I don't think I'm allowed to show you, but I got it here. We hired Prolific Brand Design. Nice. The guys they've done some huge names. When I rebranded from Central Tennessee Fence Staining to Stain and Seal Experts and got our trucks wrapped, they completely stopped questioning our prices. They said, "We see your trucks everywhere." I had one truck. "We see your trucks everywhere. We want to get a quote." I was like, "That's right. They're everywhere." And so it made a humongous impact for our business. So as we launched the franchise business, I knew I had sort of a responsibility to set the bar even higher. And so we've got a new brand coming out, and it's going to be so different from what we currently have. But it's more thought out. It's more fun. It's more marketable. It's more usable. And so it's more readable. I keep touching the wrong side. More readable, and it's going to be huge. So I'm super excited about that, and don't care what anybody thinks. It's not going to be a Jaguar rebranding. It's going to be an American rebranding. So I think you guys will really like it and appreciate it, and excited for that. That will be coming out over the next few days. I would show you right now, but I might get in trouble. So I'll just.
I don't want you getting in trouble. Don't get in trouble over me. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll show you if you want. I'll show you when we go offline.
Okay. No, that's cool. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what it looks like. Well, we'll wrap up with that. Stay tuned to find out what the new rebranding looks like, folks. That's a teaser if I've ever heard one. Caleb, thank you so much for tuning in. Everybody, thank you for watching, listening. Until the next time, that's it for the Stain Game.
Cool. Thank you.